I know it when I see it. This is a phrase that gained widespread attention in the 1960s during the United States Supreme Court case Jacob Ellis versus Ohio, when Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart used it to describe his test for determining whether or not a movie that was played in a theater was considered protected speech by the First Amendment of the Constitution or was considered obscene, a form of hardcore pornography.
I shall not today attempt further to define the kinds of material I understand to be embraced within that shorthand description, and perhaps I could never succeed in intelligibly doing so. But I know it when I see it.
Now, some of you might be thinking, what the hell does this have to do with Escape from Tarkov? Well, other than the obscenities that we undoubtedly all scream at a hardcore game filled with what can only be described as gun porn, not a whole lot. I do, however, agree with Justice Stewart's sentiment that I know it when I see it, when on the topic of getting Tarkoved. But just like the confusion and ambiguity that arose from this statement in the history of the courts, this doesn't really get us any closer to really understanding what it means when we say you got Tarkoved. Now, unlike Justice Stewart, I actually do plan today to attempt to further define the kinds of material that I understand to be embraced by this shorthand description. Now, at its highest level, getting Tarkoved can be seen as the frustrating and soul-killing experience that players of Escape from Tarkov have when the game seemingly steals something of value, whether that's the loot or their time, due to some disconnect between the player's expectations and the reality of the game. Now, I agree that's only slightly more helpful than the I know it when I see it idea. So the goal of this video is to codify many of the different ways in which this can happen, some of the reasons for these disconnects, and what, if anything, we, the entire community, can do about them. Let's start with our first expectation, that games are meant to be fun. For starters, what does fun even mean anyways? Now, in looking for an appropriate definition of the term, I happened upon all sorts of other ideas that made sense but were obvious and honestly not really helpful, like amusement or enjoyment. But then I ended up going down a bit of an interesting rabbit hole that actually changed my initial gut reaction, giving me a completely different perspective on this idea. First, after coming across this definition, I had to look into what the hell the word mirth meant, because honestly it was the first time I think I had ever seen that written out. Then trying to find a suitable synonym for gaiety that wouldn't distract the children in the audience, I eventually stumbled upon the word vivacious, and for some reason I had a bit of an epiphany. Now, as a quick aside, as many of you know, my online name Veritas is a direct reference to the Latin word for truth, named after the goddess of truth of Roman mythology. Now, I've always had a bit of an interest in Latin because it's super useful and important in understanding the origin of words in my own primary language of English, as well as most of the other Romance languages that I've tried to learn over the years, like Spanish, French, and Portuguese. The study of the history and roots of language, called etymology, is a bottomless well of knowledge and context. The more that I learn new Latin words here and there, I can't help but find all sorts of interesting connections between all sorts of different concepts that I wouldn't have thought were related. So back to the word vivacious, which is used to describe something that's full of life. It's no surprise that the root vivere in Latin means to live. But exploring this etymological tree out further, we see some other interesting connections, such as survive. So why is this significant? Honestly, I'm not really sure if there's some deeper connection here that I'm hitting on, or if this is just a connection that my brain made by accident. But there's something about living, about survival, that's really compelling in this context. Personally, I find it compelling due to the wide range of experiences that we can have and the emotions that come with them through life. Now, as soon as I start thinking about that, I suddenly feel a bit foolish for all the times I laughingly rolled my eyes dismissively when I heard Nikita saying the game wasn't meant to be fun. Hell, I even sampled the meme of him talking about why he loves games so much and how Tarkov isn't meant to be fun into one of my own songs. Taking a second look at what it was he said here from a fresh perspective, it actually means a lot more to me now, and I interpret what he said in a totally different way. If I think long and hard about some of my favorite video games and the moments that I've had throughout my life playing them, I think back to beating the Forest Temple in Ocarina of Time, doing Uber Tristram runs in Diablo 2 with my Smiter Paladin, getting all the Golden Guds in COD 4 without cheesing headshots, finally earning real Platinum God in The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, winning my first chicken dinner in PUBG. Some of these experiences had lots of moments that I would call fun, but many more of them I would describe as heart-pumping, nerve-wracking, vein popping out of my neck in frustration, controller throwing, or tear-filled. Some of the most amazing, pivotal, meaningful, or lasting experiences in my life include some of the crazy things I've done with my friends throughout the years of school, mistakes I've made, and lessons learned along the way, marrying the love of my life, exploring with her the ruins of Pompeii where I can literally see the remains of two loved ones holding each other's hand during their actual final moments thousands of years ago, winning Pop Warner football championships, or losing fistfights sticking up for friends. The experiences that are the most important to me can't all be described as fun, but they're the things in my life that make me who I am. Video games, especially role-playing games, are all about living vicariously through someone else, experiencing a wider array of possible experiences and emotions. Now, it's really easy to hear Nikita say, the game is not meant to be fun, and laugh at the meme, but it's also just as easy to ignore, misunderstand, or completely miss entirely when he says things like this.
I remember when I played Resident Evil 2 on PlayStation 1, I got like this constant fear in my head. I couldn't sleep for 2 or 3 days, and I decided, no way I will be playing these games or ever make them in the future. The games is like an advanced book. You can travel in the fantasy world. You can make some changes. It's like a real fiction, but it's life. You can play it. You can feel it. And I loved the game where you can play these big environments, like the enriched story modes. Like the initial idea, tagline of EFT was the battle simulator in hazardous environment. So the idea was to create battle simulator in a hazardous environment with the features that will help people to feel heat, feel the real life experience. It's not for fun, actually. I never said that EFT will be fun game. You should have fun. If you want to have fun, you could play the game you all know. I don't even name them.
And after he goes on to say,
satisfying, yes. You will have this pleasure and this like inner joy, inner.
Now, unfortunately, here is where the language barrier fails us because he wasn't able to find the right word to express what he was thinking. Perhaps he meant something like accomplishment, fulfillment, or even meaning. I'm not sure, but I think I get at what he's trying to hint at here. I think if we were better interviewers, we might have caught the significance of what he was trying to get across and maybe dig into it a bit more, because honestly, this is a perspective that I don't think I've ever gotten from Nikita before. Think about some of your favorite books or movies. The first 5 titles that come to mind for me are Saving Private Ryan, Interstellar, 12 Monkeys, Her, and The Jaunt. None of these are really what you would describe as fun, but they each have their own set of emotions and meanings that hit me in different ways that change my perspective on things, leading to my experiences in life being seen through a different lens. They were vicarious escapes from my world into another, glimpses into aspects of humanity and living that I never experienced myself, and will hopefully never have to. But because I didn't have fun watching them doesn't diminish them in some way. Now perhaps this is what Nikita is trying to get at. Games, like other entertainment mediums, should challenge us, the way we think, our assumptions, make us feel different emotions. They should be punishing and rewarding, be painful and satisfying. The closer and deeper you get to these different feelings, the more full of life it feels, because you're experiencing more of life. Saving Private Ryan is about a war that I never experienced, couldn't imagine experiencing, and something I hopefully never have to experience myself. The pain and suffering and agony, regret, fear, and loss. Brotherhood and sacrifice and pride and duty and triumph. Interstellar delves into some of the most awe-inspiring aspects of cosmology and our universe that I personally find some of the most amazing and compelling concepts I've ever learned about that are actually real, like relativity and time dilation. 12 Monkeys grapples with issues like free will, the nature of memory and perception, time travel, and even madness. Her is an amazingly intriguing dive into relationships, love, humanity, and technology. The Jaunt is a short horror story written by Stephen King about a future where teleportation is discovered and used as a common mode of transportation. following an otherwise normal small family on their way from their home in Schenectady, New York, to their husband's new workplace on Mars. Now, I almost never sit down and read anything because I'm too ADD, but let me tell you that the night I was camping in the deep woods of Maine, sitting next to a fire that I had made, reading through this story of about 15 pages. The jaunt takes readers through the banality of family travel with kids, in tandem with the history of the invention of teleportation in this fictional and future world, and literally turns everything on its head suddenly on the last page. It left me with thoughts and feelings that I'd never experienced before. It was one of the first truly terrifying things in media that I experienced. I sat there with the book open in my hands, jaw on the floor, for probably about an hour after I was done, silently thinking, imagining, contemplating. It left a mark on me that I've never forgotten. It wasn't happy, it wasn't fun, but it was an experience of a slice of life that I couldn't live without now and would highly recommend to everyone. Hell, it's these types of emotions and experiences that separate just another piece of media from a piece of art. Now, it's easy to hear the term game and instantly think, oh, fun and interactive. But I think what Nikita wants Tarkoved to be is more like an immersive and interactive experience that leaves you feeling something, even if it's not always fun and laughter. And if you look at different aspects of the game through that lens, I'd say he's actually onto something. Now, let's not use this as an excuse to dismiss all of the rest of the things that contribute to the feeling of getting Tarkoved. We're just getting started here. One of the most important aspects of what I just described is the concept of interactivity. You aren't just a passive observer in this world. You're a living, breathing entity that has the ability to interact with the different elements inside of the world that this game creates. It's the agency you're given, the decisions you make with the information you have that has stakes, repercussions. You have a vested interest in what happens. This gives everything weight. Now, some ways game developers enable players to have their intended experiences are better than others. Now, I'm guessing what Nikita and Battlestate want to create here are the similar sorts of feelings, experiences, and tone akin to Band of Brothers, Black Hawk Down, The Hurt Locker, or Saving Private Ryan. Replicating the overwhelming stress and fear and regret, making you feel the weight of the decisions that you make and the results that come from it. Now, when I first started playing Tarkov, that feeling was all too present. I'm sure many of you who may be new to the game probably still have this feeling. Walking through a raid, scared, overwhelmed, lost, confused, stressed about where to go and what to do, it was easier then dealing with death and failure because I expected it. I understood I was new to the experience, had tons to learn, and skills to develop to become a true veteran of the game, but that's why I pushed through. The more I played, the more confident I became, the better and faster my skills as well as my intuition and decision-making got, responding to the environment, using my game sense and experiences in clever ways to prepare for and outsmart my enemies. This was the reward for my progression, my persistence. The sense of accomplishment, earned expertise was fantastic. Now, at some point, something changed. The game started to feel less satisfying, but not just for me, and it wasn't overnight, it was over time, and it was for lots of veterans in the community. Now, the only metaphor I can give to describe the paradigm shift that I've personally felt is something along the lines of moving from an expert fighter pilot, heart racing but laser focused in the midst of a firefight, not invincible, but confident and prepared to respond to whatever I might face, to suddenly feeling like I'm a passenger in a crashing jetliner holding on for dear life. All the same stakes, without the same feeling of agency or control. I've kind of been getting the sense that Tarkov is accidentally and unknowingly slipping closer to something like the experience of a game that many of you might be familiar with, called Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. Now, this game is a masterpiece in and of itself, but for a completely different and purposeful set of reasons. Getting Over It is a punishing, challenging, painful, emotional roller coaster, and it's that way on purpose for specific reasons. An exploration into the process of taking strongly held axioms of game design and flipping it totally on its head. It challenges the very nature of challenge itself. Getting Over It is narrated by Bennett Foddy himself, who philosophizes about things like disappointment, perseverance, and overcoming obstacles, as players are literally in real time consistently disappointed while they're consistently and actively failing at literally overcoming the game's obstacles. All aspects of the game's design, from a lack of a tutorial to the awkward and unintuitive controls and locomotion of the main character, a level designed to be punishing, infuriating, and ambiguous, and the perfectly timed and toned narration to metaphorically kick players when they're down in a tongue-in-cheek style, are there on purpose. It makes the game successful at being a transparent and self-aware commentary on these ideas. Now, for anyone who is the bystander of somebody else playing through Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, which is something I would highly recommend if you're looking for some giggles, it's the closest thing to the purest manifestation of schadenfreude that's ever existed. But to the people playing it, I would think it could be rarely described as fun. Now, despite this, myself and many others still consider this game a work of art, and I would argue that it is a fantastic and important game nonetheless. Now, Escape from Tarkov has many aspects that you could similarly describe as frustrating, punishing, and ambiguous, but I would argue that they're not there to move along some sort of meta-narrative. They're not purposeful, they're not metaphorical, they don't have any meaning. All evidence points to the idea that they exist, very likely due to a combination of questionable design, bugs and tech debt, and a lack of both foresight and development resources. Now, I wanted to use the topic of fun as an introduction to this multi-part discussion that we'll be having about getting Tarkoved, because I think it provides valuable perspective that we should use as the foundation for the rest of the concepts I'm going to be touching on in this series. The primary goal of games does not need to be fun, and in the case of games like Escape from Tarkov, fun shouldn't be the main focus. At the same time, fun isn't the enemy. It's not something that should be prevented or actively sabotaged. It's something that should come naturally through the experience. Now, especially in a world like Tarkov, moments of fun should be spotlighted and promoted in the rare moments that they're experienced. Now, the biggest disconnect on the issue of fun is when the game's design squelches any fun or enjoyment, but for no meaningful reason at all, due to some oversight or long-standing and easily reproducible known issue. This leads to community resentment and toxicity aimed at Nikita and the developers at Battlestate, upset that the game isn't fun for them, and although I can't really blame him for his reaction, it doesn't help that Nikita's response to these complaints can often give the impression that these issues are part of the intended experience. We need to discuss these experiences and understand the reasons behind their prevalence in the game and within the community, so that we can better understand what sorts of things lead to a better, more meaningful experience, and what sorts of things that devs should fix, revisit, or discard. I don't want the game to be easier, or harder, or more frustrating, or more hardcore, or more casual, or more realistic. I want the game to be better, intuitive, more compelling, natural, and immersive. I want the experience as a whole to be deeper, even if that means varying the amount of fun that will be had in the process, because I now understand a little bit more, I think, about what Nikita means when he talks about what he wants for the game and how he wants people to feel when they play it. I hope you do too. Hopefully you've gained as much insight as I have during this introduction to this new series of topics I want to discuss, and I plan to get into some of the other expectations that we have that Tarkov challenges, from interesting topics like user experience, accessibility, realism, to ideas like randomness, fairness, the different play styles, and risk versus reward, and onto issues of performance, bugs, netcode, and more. I hope you're looking forward to more like this in the future.